We went to high school together, so I have a lot of history with my 26-year-old sister-in-law, Stephy. She was a significant bully, and since she could, I was one of her favorite targets. In high school, I was a giant nerd. Let me briefly introduce myself. I am Emma, a wonderful soul navigating through life's twists and turns with resilience and determination. My appearance surely did not assist my situation. My braces, the misery of my life, kept me extremely thin. I felt like the typical nerdy girl in a movie about high school when they got ready after taking off their spectacles. However, in my case, I had to get my braces taken off instead of my glasses. Regretfully, I didn't undergo my metamorphosis till I was a college student. Fortunately, I've gained a lot of weight and had my braces taken out before starting college, so I look much better today. Not that there was anything wrong with my appearance before, but as of right now, I'm just far less likely to be teased by others. In any case, when I was in my third year of college, I went to a party on campus, and that's how I met my husband, David, a few years ago. He was the DJ there. That was his former part-time job. He was 3 years older than me. I got wasted at that party, so it was meant to be. I was driving home from my apartment, and he offered to take me home. I was so inebriated that no one was prepared to take me home. He took me home with such grace. He liked me so much that he even wrote his phone number on the back of my palm and told me I may call him. Even though I had a horrible hangover the following morning, I knew I had found a fantastic guy. That was it. I called him and asked him to go on a date. On our very first date, we clicked so beautifully that I knew I had found the one. That being said, the only thing that bothered me was his sister, as we connected right away when he told me about his family during our first date. He mentioned to me that Stephy was his sister. He then told me, grave-looking, that it might have been his sister because she did have some behavioral issues in school when I laughed about how I had a bully in high school with the same name. We concluded that his sister was, in fact, my high school bully when he revealed to me the name of the high school she attended. Even though it was uncomfortable, I wasn't going to let it stand in the way of our plans. He agreed when I told him it wasn't a huge deal because I liked him and not his sister, and she wasn't involved in any of this. We decided to introduce each other to our families after 3 months of dating. I introduced him to my family quite quickly, but he found it challenging and unpleasant, knowing that my connection with his sister was not the best. I was somewhat anxious when I had supper with his family for the first time, primarily because of Stephy. It went well, though. While Stephy was distant and chilly, his parents' warmth and kindness were nonetheless preferable to her treatment of me in high school. The fact that this new version of her is so much easier to cope with makes me genuinely prefer her. We didn't communicate much and didn't spend much time together, but I saw that as a positive because it meant I wouldn't have to talk to her, and we could ignore one another. That's how things have been with us for the past couple of years, so I consider myself somewhat lucky. She hasn't shown any desire to be friends with me, and I haven't had to deal with her very often. She spoke to me only as much as was asked of her, even after David and I were married 2 years ago. I am, therefore, not at all close to her. Neither of us would want it any other way since I don't want to be friends with someone like her after the way she treated me in high school. David doesn't seem to be bothered by this either, as he understands how cruel his sister can be and doesn't find it bothersome that the two of us don't communicate. He is aware that I have not forgiven her for the way she destroyed my high school experience, since she has never expressed regret to me. I find it difficult to forgive someone who is not even depressed, and he respects that. But like most other people, he and Stephy share a regular sibling connection. That doesn't bother me since I am content with the fact that he does not see Stephy the same way I do. In addition, a great deal of time has passed since high school graduation. Now that my sister and I are on good terms again, I don't want to tell my husband to stop talking to her and start making a big deal out of nothing. So all is well in the family, and to be honest, I got used to it. When Stephy contacted me a few weeks ago to ask whether I would be interested in going on her Bachelorette vacation to the Greek islands, I was utterly taken aback. She invited me over for lunch rather than just making a casual phone inquiry. David was the one who encouraged me to give it a shot despite my first misgivings. It was during our lunch date that she made the request. She was pleasant with me over that meal, and even after that, instead of acting as though our past was unimportant, she eventually apologized and acknowledged it. I was shocked since I never thought Stephy would recognize that throughout our time together in high school, she had bullied me severely. When it finally happened, I was utterly at a loss for how to respond. She expressed her regret to me for how she had treated me at the time, calling me a spoiled brat who had discovered her error far too late. She added that she felt uncomfortable bringing up old memories and did not know how to confront me after everything she had put me through when we were teenagers, which was why she had never addressed her behavior, even after I began dating her brother. She even started crying as she was talking about all of these things to make it seem more accurate, and I, being the naive, emotional idiot that I am, fell head over heels for it all. Since we were all adults here, I informed her that I had forgiven her, that it was all in the past, and that I no longer had any problems with her. We could handle it the way we were supposed to, share a few drinks, and go on. We concluded our lunch on a positive note, and she appeared pleased about it. In an attempt to make up for a missed time, she asked me to accompany her on her Bachelorette vacation to the islands with her pals. Gave me the impression that we were friends. Initially, at first, I was trying to decide whether to accept Stephy's invitation. Nevertheless, she persuaded me to do it. In the end, I consented since it would be enjoyable and might help me get to know her better. Every time we were in the same room, there was tension between us, and I was sick of it. I gave it a lot of thought before deciding to say yes, since I was ready to put the past behind us and start our relationship over. We decided to take a trip and let our hair down as the best approach to handle it. I kept in contact with Stephy after that, which was a few weeks ago. We were meant to travel for the trip at the beginning of this week. She was getting married next month, but it didn't happen because of a small prank she chose to carry out at the airport. We were all chatting when we got there, approximately an hour before our flight was supposed to take off. Stephy then asked me to grab coffee when she stated she wanted to. I informed her I would be bringing cash for trinkets and souvenirs while we were at the counter, and she remarked breezily, "Oh, by the way, I hope all your cards work internationally because otherwise, you'll have a difficult time paying for stuff." However, she then delivered the bombshell. She wanted me to cover all expenses, including airfare, lodging, and meals. Since I had the most significant wage she was aware of, she believed I would cover the total cost of the vacation. We'd never talked about it, and I'd never consented to any of it, but she said it was the most obvious thing in the world. When I questioned whether she was genuine, she said that she had anticipated that I would pay for everyone's travel expenses. I could think of several reasons why this was not appropriate. First off, I never consented to any of this. And secondly, I was only acquainted with a small portion of the trip participants. I wasn't going to spend this money on a holiday for a group of strangers because it was my money and my decision. I stood there for a bit before making the discreet decision to walk away. I didn't think I needed to explain when Steffi came after me, and her pals tried to ask me what was wrong. I found the first taxi I could locate and blocked Steffi's number to prevent her from getting in touch with me. When I got home, I contacted David and told him what had happened. Outraged, he called his parents right away to discuss the situation. Though he had higher hopes for his sister than I had, he was considerably more disappointed in her behavior. For the remainder of the day, I heard nothing from any member of his family. I chatted with my in-laws for 2 days after that. They expressed regret for how Steffi had behaved, but I told them it wasn't their fault. I knew David had been well raised by them. After the incident, David and I swiftly returned to our regular lives. I didn't inquire about any repercussions for Steffi because I no longer wanted to contact her. But 2 days later, I learned that her fiancé had broken up with her and that the wedding had been called off. What she'd done to me seemed to have an indirect effect on it. David informed me that Steffi was blaming our family for her and her fiancé's breakup when we got home from work that day. We hadn't spoken to her since the incident at the airport, so I was perplexed. It seems that when David informed his parents about Steffi's attempted action, they contacted her and requested that she issue an apology to me. Instead, she proceeded to accuse them of being stingy and impolite. Her parents, furious, informed her that they would no longer be covering the cost of the wedding. She tried to seem as if nothing was wrong, but it was evident that this had thrown her into disarray. She had recently resigned from her job to establish her own business. Therefore, she wasn't able to pay all the bills herself, with the wedding being only a few weeks away. David informed me that following her chat with her parents, she decided to tell her fiancé that her parents would no longer be paying for the wedding. They got into a heated argument because she thought he would take command. With only a few weeks till the wedding, it was undoubtedly unreasonable of her to surprise him. Thus, The reason the wedding was called off was because of their altercation. After David told me the entire tale, I questioned him about how he had discovered it. He informed me that Emily showed up at their parents' place and got into a confrontation with them as well, following the altercation with her fiancé. She had been placing the blame for what occurred on both of us, mostly just on me, which I find unjust given that I had no involvement at all in this circumstance. She claimed that I was the reason she had to postpone her trip with her pals in the first place since I wouldn't pay. She didn't see any other way out of this, so she was going to have to call off her entire wedding, and her fiancé was probably going to end their relationship. I have the tiniest disagreement with the trip because there was no discussion at all about my having to pay for anything. She was foolish to expect anything from me, therefore. However, I regret that her wedding is being called off. I think I shouldn't have been so agitated about the whole issue and shouldn't have complained to my husband. I suppose the reason I feel sorry for her is that I know she was eager to get married. First and foremost, I appreciate you informing me that this is not my fault. That was just what I needed to hear. The fact that Stephy had been posting depressing things about feeling betrayed didn't help my awful mood. I have blocked her everywhere. But even after the 5 days following the airport event, I am positive that she has been posting strange and depressing statements to gain attention. Additionally, she pretends to be the victim and gives her version of the story to anyone who questions her about it. I no longer feel guilty about her wedding being called off because it's apparent that she would do all in her power to paint me as the antagonist in her tale. I also don't have to feel sorry for her. She's even gone so far as to tell people that although she had anticipated that I would stab her in the back, she never imagined that her brother would support or put up with this kind of behavior. She was mistaken, though, and her brother gave a damn about how she felt. I should stress once again how she had never once asked if I was comfortable or willing to cover her and her friends' travel expenditures. It was, therefore, her responsibility to cancel at the last minute and return from the airport. However, according to her account, we had this conversation multiple times. Even so, I lost it at the airport and made the decision to storm out, which was a massive insult to her since it meant she and her companions would have to return home. It was uncomfortable, and the excursion never took place. She has been spreading these lies about me, and it irritates me. However, since it appeared so strange to me, I'm glad that the majority of the relatives she's been saying this to have gotten in touch with me to inquire about it. I explained myself and gave them my side of the story, and most people have accepted me as accurate. She is, therefore, coming across as a complete liar and an imbecile, and whatever she is attempting to accomplish is failing. David told me he wanted to talk to her, that she couldn't just keep lying to others about us. However, I informed him that since what she was doing was ineffective, he didn't need to speak to her at all. And she's simply doing it to herself, not to harm our reputation. We can just let her continue then. Are you enjoying the story so far? Show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. Now, let's dive back into the story. Approximately 2 weeks have passed since we discovered that Stephy would not be getting married. She had been disparaging us to all of her family members, but it had no effect because most of them did not believe her and came to me for verification. After a few days, everyone recognized the truth that I had told them. Therefore, it was pointless for her to attempt to paint us as the villains. She stopped as a result. We assumed that would be the end of the story, but it seems that there is still more to it because she has since moved in with her parents after her fiancé split up, leaving her with nowhere else to go. A nice guy, her fiancé, offered to give her the flat so he could move out. She decided to move out and live with her parents as she could not afford the rent on her own. It strikes David and me as particularly ironic that she spoke up so much after her parents informed her that they would not be paying for her wedding. She had acted as though she had everything all out. However, at this point in her life, her parents were the only ones she could turn to. And despite all of her unpleasant behavior, my in-laws were gracious enough to take her in. But since she's moved in with them, I suppose she ought to have known better than to keep bringing up David and me, if only in front of her parents, who also happen to be David's parents. She truly is one of the dumbest people I have ever met, though, as she continued to act as though we were the bad guys and talk trash about us in front of my in-laws, despite their repeated warnings that she was not permitted to do so. Consequently, my in-laws decided to forbid her from living with them in the future, and instead gave her the option to admit her error and make an effort to change. This infuriated her since she started messaging David to remind him daily that I did more than sabotage her bachelorette party and wedding. However, her fiancé dumped her, and I have also damaged her life because of it. Her parents continue to support me as though I'm to blame for any of it. She is family, so he hasn't blocked her yet, but she's in a precarious situation right now. A few more texts are against me in a code. I'm pretty confident David will physically come to his parents' house and give her a lesson. Although it's inappropriate, I'm pretty sure she's simply doing this to agitate us or let out her anger. We did it. And after that, I was at my wit's end because she was going too far and contacting David with the worst things to say about me. She even believed that we wouldn't actively attempt to avenge her, so she anticipated to get away with it. Sadly, though, we are not that kind to her. She'd called me all the names in the book and said things like insecure and jealous. I had even flat out lied when I declared that I didn't look much better than I did in high school. She makes it a point to criticize my appearance whenever she has the chance, because she is aware of how sensitive I am to it. Additionally, it has become clear at this point. Furthermore, I find it incomprehensible that she believes that I would be envious of her, given how much better my life is at the moment than hers. She genuinely possesses nothing about which I may feel jealous or uneasy. Nevertheless, she had been texting David these things to enrage us. She was successful in doing so because we challenged her earlier this evening at my in-laws' place, because she needed to stop thinking that she could say and do anything she wanted. Then, we would consistently let her get away with it. Since we had already met with David's parents, they were aware of our purpose and asked us a few questions before allowing us in. Stephy was seated in the living area. She asked her parents why we were there, acting as though we weren't supposed to be there and that she was the only one who was permitted to visit them. She looked shocked to see us. I took over the conversation and informed her that I had had enough of her nonsense and that she needed to learn how to keep her mouth shut. They have yet to respond. I would no longer put up with her always talking bad about me. She therefore had to stop mentioning me to anyone. Should she fail to comply, I would ensure that my version of events was also made public, which would not be suitable for her. When I told her to keep quiet and just apologize for everything, she instantly became distraught and accused me of blackmailing her and ambushing her family. She informed us that she would not comply, began packing, and left in less than an hour, knowing that she would be living with a friend and that she was no longer wanted there. No friend will let her live with them freely or for free, so I'm hopeful that she'll return in a few weeks. Furthermore, given how miserly she is, I seriously doubt that she will cough up anything in exchange for the opportunity to live for free with her parents again. However, as of right now, she is no longer with us, and I am in a much better place. And when I say that, everyone would agree. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. specifying the brand of wine. They're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.